MLB games have been known to be very boring and seemingly never ending to many before the 2020 rule change, which added an automatic runner on second base during extra innings. Since this rule was implemented, the longest game was a 16-inning matchup between the Dodgers and Padres in 2021. It took the Dodgers 5 hours and 41 minutes to finally pull off the win. Besides one other game that went 15 innings, every single other game has ended in 14 innings or less. In 2019 alone, before the rule was implemented, there were 23 games longer than 14 innings. Along with the pitch clock added in 2023, games have been shorter than ever. Game time is down almost 30 minutes from last year, from 3 hours and 6 minutes in 2022 to only 2 hours and 39 minutes in 2023. This has me thinking about the opposite end of the spectrum. What is the longest game in MLB history? There are actually two answers depending on the way you look at it. The most obvious is the longest time it took to complete a game. It was a 7-6 win for the Chicago White Sox over the Milwaukee Brewers in 25 innings. The game lasted for a staggering 8 hours and 6 minutes. In a similar time, you can drive from where the game was held in Chicago to the home of the Brewers in Milwaukee, back to Chicago, back to Milwaukee, back to Chicago again, and then finally back to Milwaukee. Anyways, Tony La Russa led the White Sox in this game as their manager. Yes, the same guy that managed them almost 40 years later in 2022. La Russa had Bob Fallon on the mound in one of only 3 games he would ever start in his short career, this being the final of the 3. Fallon was set to duel Don Sutton, who started the 3rd most games in MLB history. His 756 games started is only behind Nolan Ryan with 773 and Cy Young with 815. The two starters would end up in a fierce duel. This would end up being Bob Fallon's best pitching performance of his life. Through 6 innings, Fallon would be in the driver's seat. He only allowed 1 hit while facing the minimum, and his team was winning 1-0. The 1 run his team scored for him was unearned due to a dropped foul ball by Brewers third baseman Randy Reddy, which resulted in a run scoring later. Fallon would exit the game after walking a batter in the 7th who would later score. His final line was 6 innings of 1-run ball, walking 3 batters and striking out 4. Don Sutton would have an arguably even better start as he pitched 7 innings with the 1 unearned run mentioned earlier, 4 hits, 3 walks, and 6 strikeouts. With the game tied 1-1 in the 7th, the bullpens would have to cover the rest of the 18 innings yet to be played. The 9th inning would prove to be a bit shaky as Robin Yount led off the inning for the Brewers with a double, putting pressure on the pitching and defense of the White Sox with no one out. Yount then stole third, and after the ball was overthrown by the catcher trying to throw him out, Yount was able to score on the play. The game was now 2-1 Brewers, and they had an 82% chance of winning the game. This stolen base would be the second most pivotal throughout all of the 1984 season in terms of win percentage added. Ted Simmons would get a hit right after the error that caused Yount to score. A wild pitch would then send Simmons to second, and a hit by Ben Ogilvy would drive him in. At this point, the Brewers had a comfortable 92% win probability. The top of the 9th would end with the catcher, future Hall of Famer Carlton Fisk, trying to make up for his earlier error, which allowed Robin Yount to score. Fisk would throw out the next 2 batters trying to steal second for the final outs of the inning. Fun fact, this game ranks 23rd all-time in terms of one team's runners caught stealing. Carlton Fisk threw out 4 Brewers this game. The last time 4 runners from one team were thrown out was back in August of 2011 in a game between the Astros and Diamondbacks. Another fun fact is that it started snowing in the middle of this game in May, and they played through it. That might explain some of the many oddities from this game. All the players were just cold. Now in the bottom of the 9th, another future Hall of Famer, Rollie Fingers, would come in to get the final 3 outs. The first ball was popped up to the right fielder Charlie Moore for an easy catch. Instead, he dropped the ball, which let the runner go to second with no one out. Rollie Fingers would get the next 2 men out. The last out would not come easily as the next batter doubled in a run, and the batter after him would get a single to tie up the game. Rollie Fingers would then get out of the inning by striking out Carlton Fisk, and this game was going to extra innings. Even though the score was 3-3, all of the White Sox runs were unearned. Every run was the result of poor defense by the Brewers. The bullpens would be dominant past the 9th inning, as there wouldn't even be many threats. In the 14th inning, the White Sox got the bases loaded with 1 out and did not score. This wasn't before the crowd broke into their second helping of Take Me Out to the Ball game between innings. 503 pitches and 17 innings into the game, there was no winner. The time on the field was now 1:03 a.m. Instead of marching on late into the night, they decided to suspend the game. They were already scheduled to play another game against each other, so the plan was to finish up the game from the day before and then start a new game right after. When the game got back into action the following day, it felt the same as the day before. No team was scoring. In the 18th, the Brewers loaded up the bases again, which led to nothing. Pitching dominated and no side was giving in. After not threatening for the past 12 innings, the Brewers finally had something cooking in the 21st. They had runners on first and second with 2 men out, and Ben Ogilvy stepped to the plate. He hit a 3-run bomb which doubled the score for the Brewers. Finally, it seemed like there was a clear winner. The Brewers had a 96% chance win probability and 3 outs to get in the bottom of the 21st. The first batter in the bottom of the inning reached on yet another error. This caused a runner to be on second base to start the inning for the White Sox. Still, with a 3-run cushion, there was not much concern for the Brewers. This error would again be costly, as the next batter drove in the run from second with a single. The tying run was now at the plate, and with the hit, he landed the tying run on base. After no scoring for 12 innings, for some reason the 21st inning was special. A strikeout got the Brewers their first out of the inning, but Harold Baines would walk next to load the bases, and he represented the potential winning run. The Brewers pitcher was Chuck Porter, a below-average pitcher for the Brewers in the early 80s. His career ERA+, where 100 is league average, was 93. Throughout his 5-year career, this moment, an at-bat against Tom Paciorek, was the highest leverage situation he would ever find himself in. Leverage index is a stat used to figure out how much pressure is on a batter or pitcher in a play. 1 is average pressure, and anything above that is a high pressure situation. This at-bat was a 7. The pressure would get to Chuck Porter as he allowed a base hit, which allowed the tying run to score and the winning run to move to second base. Instead of finally letting the game end, Porter would step up and get the next 2 men out, which meant there would be even more baseball to play. I wonder how all the players were feeling knowing they had to play another full 9-inning game right after this. Weird stuff would continue to happen this game, like this play in the 23rd where Dave Stegman is rounding third. Jim Leyland, the third base coach, would touch the runner trying to assist him. The umpires came together and ruled the runner out on the play, which shattered the hopes of many White Sox fans. Let's fast forward to the last inning of this marathon game, the 25th. In the top of the inning, the White Sox would call on Tom Seaver, who was well past his Cy Young years with the Mets. This was the first time he came into a game in relief since 1976. He was in his 18th year in the league, but still putting up pretty solid numbers. He had an ERA plus of 105, so he was above league average. The first batter of the inning managed to hit a ball off the Hall of Famer, but the next batter, Robin Yount, would erase it with a double play. Cecil Cooper would follow up Yount with a fly ball to left, and we were finally going to the last half inning of the game. Chuck Porter was still pitching. He was entering his 8th inning pitched in relief. This has to be one of the greatest bullpen games of all time. Eventually, something had to crack. It could not go on forever. Dave Stegman would strike out for the 147th and final out of the game. The next batter was yet another future Hall of Famer, Harold Baines, and this is what he did.
That's deep into center field. Manning going back. This could be out of here. Manning looks up. It's out of here. A home run for Harold Baines. The Sox win 7-6 in the longest game in American League history.
8 hours and 6 minutes, spread over 2 days, and the game had finally ended, all on one swing. Tom Seaver got the win and Chuck Porter got the loss as the White Sox bested the Brewers by a score of 7-6. Now they could finally go home and rest after their never-ending game. Oh wait, I forgot. They had another game to play right after. I won't go too into detail about this next game, but I would like to mention that Tom Seaver got right back on the mound for it and pitched 8.1 innings, picking up his second win of the day, which I'm not sure has ever happened before. Or at least not since the days of the 1920s, where pitchers' health did not matter. This game ended with a 5-4 score in favor of the White Sox in a normal 9-inning game, and it only took 2 hours and 9 minutes. That's only a minute longer than the shortest 9-inning game played in 2021. It's funny the way baseball works. There is one game technically longer than 25 innings. All the way back in 1920, there was a game between the Brooklyn Robins, later renamed the Dodgers, and the Boston Braves that went 26 innings. The only difference about this game is the time it took to complete it. This game was 4 hours and 16 minutes shorter than the Brewers White Sox game. The game only lasted 3 hours and 50 minutes. That's not too far off from the pre-pitch clock times of game. In 2022, an average game lasted 3 hours and 6 minutes, and 114 games lasted the same time or more than this 26-inning game. This game was probably the most evenly matched game in MLB history. I mean, look at this win probability chart. It almost never swings too far in one direction. The closest the team got was the Braves in the bottom of the 9th inning when they got up to an 83% chance win probability. It turned out that win probability would not matter in this game, as it was called after the 26th inning due to darkness, and they never made it up. It was just a tie. When you think about baseball, you don't think about ties. The game ended 1-1 after 26 innings, and both runs came relatively early. The Robins would strike first in this game, getting the run in the top of the 5th inning, and the Braves would wait until the bottom of the 6th. The teams would trade zeros for the next 20 innings. There wouldn't be any relievers either. It was just the 2 starting pitchers for 26 innings. The Braves pitcher even had 9 consecutive innings of no-hit ball. From the 18th to the 26th, the only base runner pitcher Joe Ashker would allow was a walk in the 22nd. I honestly think that this game was one of the most boring displays of baseball in history. No team was even able to be happy in the end because no one came out on top. I'm sure some of the players were disappointed in themselves, as the box score shows some of the worst individual performances I've ever seen. Charlie Pick of the Braves went 0 for 11 and committed 2 errors in the field. Pick also struck out once, which may not seem too bad, but the opposing pitcher only struck out 5 players on his team. Chuck Ward for the Robins went 0 for 10 this game, but never struck out. He also committed an error in the field. These players did nothing the entire day. I'm sure they would have been better off taking the day off and watching a Charlie Chaplin movie, or whatever people liked doing in the 20s. Anyways, those are the longest games in Major League Baseball history. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe. I have a lot more of these types of videos coming out soon, so make sure you stick around for it. Thank you, see you guys later.